So let's talk about why emotional intelligence. Interesting study that was done, again, out of McBaron Company in Harvard, shows that 75% of the stars of a profession, if we talk about the Marty Martells or the Frank Spears or the John Coyces of the world in today's world, those that we all admire and their patients admire them too, they're the stars. And that 75% of their stardom is based on emotional intelligence, while 25% is based on necessary technical competency. Doesn't seem logical, does it? Now, here's the interesting thing that McClellan's work showed in testing for competence and models and superior performance. This has been published. This is a whole series of research papers by Wiley in 1993. Again, the book Primal Leadership has some of this, as does Working with Emotional Intelligence. And then McClellan did another where they tested, and they found this most interesting thing, that the higher the requirement to get into a profession, the more important emotional intelligence became to be a leader in that particular profession. Another study that was done with emotional competency against IQ. By the way, IQ cannot be raised, but EQ can. It can't be raised by what I'm doing right now. I'm going to give you some awareness, but the only way you can raise EQ is through coaching and or hands-on EQ exercises. Our course in Austin, 2 days are strict scenarios where you're put in emotional circumstances and asked to respond differently, and that's what they talk about in these papers. The two primary research institutions in emotional intelligence today are Harvard and Rutgers. Rutgers actually is the primary seat of emotional intelligence, and if you're anywhere in the New Jersey area, you might want to contact those people and see what kinds of programs they've got going on. This study by Spencer on competency at work and IQ, given the IQ required for certain professions and highly complex technical, which I think certainly applies to those prosthodontists, restorative dentists in the room, this was their conclusions, that cognitive abilities alone are not the mark of top performers. In higher technical professional marketing and managerial, almost everyone has an IQ of 120 or above, and an advanced degree, generally from a good university. What distinguishes the superior performers in those jobs is motivation, interpersonal skills, and political skills, understanding how to get along in a group setting, if you will. Who do you suppose that is? That's my first granddaughter. And when you see a little baby like her, she's 3 days old when I went there. I'm showing you this for a reason, not just to brag on my granddaughter, although it's kind of nice to be able to do that. This is Kaylee Pearl as she's growing, and as she's growing, now she's ready to go to church one day. How many in the room have a child or a grandchild? What happens when you're with them and in their presence? What feelings do you have? Now, if you can use the word think, it's not a feeling. So you have feelings of what? When you're with your grandchildren, I wish we could talk, but I know the time is short, but you have feelings of pride. You have feelings of awe. You have feelings of magic. You have feelings of love, don't you? Those are all emotions. What's interesting about this is if you go to Erik Erikson's work, this is now her sister, Zoelle. Erik Erikson, if you know that name from Harvard, he wrote The 8 Ages of Man. By the way, he talked about the last age of man. I thought of this the other day when you gave your distinguished award and the tears came to his eyes. And I've forgotten the name of that gentleman. Denny Smith. How many of you in the room were moved by that? Everybody. That's what's called emotions. They're super powerful. But what we know is that the last age of man that he talked about in The 8 Ages of Man is integrity versus despair. As we're on that deathbed, wherever we are, will we look back on our life with integrity and say, I made the right choices? Or we look back on it with despair?